All right, so I'm going to need a volunteer. I'm working off my phone, so the audio may not be the best. However, we'll have to make do. And I want to try something out anyway. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. And I want to see if I can operate the phone off my laptop and if it's workable. So maybe somebody wants to test it out. So a couple of the things that we were talking about today. In fact, let me turn the back fan off really quick here. That will eliminate most of the noise. All right, so we are back. 19 states with National Guard being called out. Some see this as PSYOP buildup. But what I was trying to get into today is this Raja Jackson beating up Psycho Stu. And so I'm like, okay, what are we looking at here? Psycho Stu gets body slammed and then punched supposedly 20 times, and supposedly it's all real. But I got a video of it. I slowed it down. I didn't count 20 hits. So already, the version that's been popularized has been somewhat invalidated. And if you don't know what kayfabe means,
all gathering.
TTS is on. It's the portrayal of staged events within professional wrestling as real. That's what kayfabe means. It's code for maintaining a pretense of reality in front of an audience. So you have a situation where a professional mixed martial arts guy gets onto a stage. I'm testing out my screen share as well. So he gets on the stage and he fights a real wrestler and everybody says it's real. And I'm like, why are we assuming it's real? Like, shouldn't we be considering the possibility that maybe it's staged? So I slowed down the video and the fists aren't even making contact. I said, I mean, the Psycho Stu's got a big beard. He's fluffing the beard. He's not even really impacting. I mean, maybe the first two, but the impact is very superficial and the guy's playing along with it, throwing his head around. So I'm like, okay, this looks perfectly fake to me. And I slowed it down, and it's undeniable looking at the slowed down footage that he is indeed swinging his fist over the guy's face, flopping the beard. It's completely exaggerated. And to think that a trained mixed martial arts fighter would miss the face of an unconscious pinned down opponent is ridiculous. So I'm just suggesting here it's probably fake. And a lot of the wrestling is real bros are over here. One of them accused me of writing with crayons, whatever that means. But I'm just suggesting I need more footage to believe it's real. Someone else said, well, there's blood. Yeah, well, Trump's ear was bloody. That's not evidence of anything. You have to consider the question of fakeability. What's up, Jorge Glockington? And fakeability is one of the chapters in the upcoming publication. It's a very important concept when you're discussing what is even within the realm of fakeability. Can this be faked? Well, the practice of simulating bloody wounds in wrestling is ancient tech, blading. And who knows what else? The guy he could have had squibs in his beard. The idea that it was real because you saw it on TV, no. And the reason why we're all talking about it is because it was a successful, I would say, a successful PR stunt. It's going to give them a lot of traffic, and it brings up the question of, it blurs rather real and fake, because we need much more of that. Yeah, we need more angles, says Ollie Goering. Exactly. So I'm not going to be pressured into saying it's real because I don't think I have enough angles to know that it's real. So I'm going to suspend judgment. And given that it's part of the wrestling infrastructure itself, why would I assume this is real? It's kind of, to me, this is a psyop of some kind. And as far as testing whether people can tell real from fake, this is another example. You know, bring on the fake alien invasion. I don't think we've been this gullible before. So beforehand, Raha said, I'm going to keep punching until they pull me off. Watch. So I think what's happening is, and this is someone's tweet, When he gets in there and starts punching, he realizes they're not pulling him off, so he pulls a few to not kill the guy, but still wants to look tough for his chat. Yeah, even if you grant that, you're saying it wasn't real. It wasn't an authentic, real attack. But no, this is just good entertainment, and people are being dragged into it. This happens with the nightly news every day. Someone asked Grok, and Grok says, based on reports from BBC, Yahoo Sports, MMA Fighting, and Rampage Jackson's own statement, it started off scripted and kayfabe, but then it escalated into a real assault. Psycho Stu is hospitalized, but is stable. Now, a number of people are using this to kick around the political football like they did with the Austin Metcalf killing. I've seen some comments. So this might be intentional. And I looked into Psycho Stu a little bit, and he's apparently known for waving around an American flag. And he's a veteran. So now he's a damaged veteran. And so there's some kind of line has been crossed. This is some, culture war content. But it started off scripted. So what's more likely? It started off scripted and became real, or it was scripted to look like it was real and to blur the lines and get a bunch of people who normally don't care about wrestling to go talk about it. Because here we are. If anybody wants to try out the phones, it's 505-510-4226. I'm going to be taking calls off my laptop, and hopefully it's loud enough. Ollie Goering says, where's B-Lou?
Linda Curtis, FF and WWE.
How do I turn off the text-to-speech? Hopefully that's not a problem. All right, so let's get back into that. I'm just reading the comments because a lot of people are suggesting that. Here's another one. He says, this is Union Chupacabra said, Union of Deported Chupacabras. He should not be unconscious. This was a normal wrestling body slam. That's a good point. The body slam that preceded the so-called, the 20 punches to the face, it was at best 2 or 3 that contacted. Again, he fluffed the guy's beard. So the beard really helped create the illusion that there was a lot going on. But it was a normal body slam. Why was he suddenly unconscious from it? Frank says, dude, he made solid contact many times. The dude's face was broken and bloody. Dude, you need to lay off the drugs. So both of us are dudes. I'm the dude that needs to lay off the drugs, and this other dude's face is all broken and bloody. According to what? What evidence does he have that I don't have? We're all looking at the same content. Kaisa says, a lot of these people look like bots. There are rumors the guy is dead. So your argument may not be valid soon. It really depends. I guess this is too soon. Ernest says, why don't you go tell that to the doctor who said that he has a broken jaw and a concussion? The guy flatlined. There's a video of it. SYBAU. Does anybody know what that stands for? SYBAU. SYBAU. UBA. I don't know. SYBAU. Okay, shut your girt ass up. A wrestling fan. The wrestling fans are very sensitive about this. Because now they can, claim sometimes it's real. Bro, you can see that they hit him. So I'm only responding to this because I'm demonstrating the assumption built into what's on the screen, especially when you especially when you are predisposed to believe something for one reason or another. Wrestling fans, for example. Okay, muted TTS. Oh, shut your bitch ass up. Okay. Well, my point again is simply that do they have enough information or evidence to say that it's real? I mean, you can say, I don't know if it's fake, sure, but do you know that it's real? And when I saw the way that the story was packaged and sold and how it was exaggerated, I had to look. And I slowed it down, and I didn't count 20 hits. So I thought, okay, why exaggerate something if it's like a real assault, if it's a real big deal? And the fact that it was scripted and then it became real, no, come on. But wrestling fans are typical of how people process media in general. Flozic said, I thought it was real until it became super viral. That's when I became suspicious, not to mention people making it about race. Yeah, when I saw it was race, a veteran, an American flag, that's when, and then, yeah, that the virality of it, that's when I started to question it. Because anytime something goes mega viral, you need to question, why was this allowed? Why is this being projected onto the daily zeitgeist? I mean, they're putting it out there for a reason. It incites conversation. And it's become a big story. You know, everybody's talking about it. Drill went live. Yeah, that old canard. I've heard that forever. Whenever we notice that these fake events are attended by drills, people will say it was a drill and the drill went live. Alex Jones used to push that. There's still people drinking the Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown for some reason. All right, and I inadvertently created a community of cute people, a bunch of JFK Jr. worshipers. I created this account. It was like JFK Jr. fans account on X. And before I know it, I had like 3,000 people. Even this guy, this pastor who claims to be Elvis, friends with the guy from George Magazine, Eugene Ho, who claims to be Bruce Lee. And they've got this huge cult following. Like, I get more engagement with my fake JFK fan club for QAnon people than I do in my regular tweets. My point is, more people are kayfabe oriented than objectivists. Ollie Goering says there are real people that look like Psycho Stu beaten like that and no one cares. They don't go viral. And I've seen enough on Twitter as far as people getting kicked and punched in the head to get a visceral sense of when it's real and fake. And that just didn't strike me as real. And again, if you have somebody pinned down and unconscious, you shouldn't be missing. Like he was his arm, and I slowed it down. It had this swinging arc that didn't make any sense. And the way it hit the beard was very dramatic. And people are so defensive about it. Why are they so defensive about this? Trying to shut me up. Like, why don't you tell that to the doctor that had to fix his jaw? They used to say the same thing. Why didn't you do that to the families who lost loved ones? They never do appreciate the skeptics who say, hey, let's wait before we emote. Let's not react like a bunch of puppets. Let's see here. This guy, Dante, at least admitted, I agree he's a terrible striker. Yeah, he should not be a terrible striker. So we'll probably get back to that. We had some interesting threads going on in Discord. If you're not in Discord, I recommend it. If you join Patreon Red Wrench, you get into the IPR Press Club. So one of the things we've been doing here is now looking at these various PSYOPs and the relevant concurrently released programming and correlating this with other previous PSYOPs. So today we were doing some examination into the linkages between the assassination of Abe Lincoln, JFK, and the shooting of Donald Trump. And along with this, the movies that were concurrently released last year that were basically reinforcing what happened to Trump. And we came up with some interesting observations here, which I kind of want to get into. The usual Metascript breakdown stuff, but we're looking a little deeper at these connections. And we came across some things that I recommend joining our Discord because we're going to go further with this. Because I think it's noteworthy to show, for example, the correlations between the shooting of Reagan and the shooting of Trump, how these are similarly staged. Tim Osman says, anyone notice IPS looks like Adam Lanza in the same age too? We should transvestigate. Yeah, I already failed my investigation. Now, I don't know, but I've considered this. I was refused multiple jobs for no reason after having been approved via the interview. And maybe I do look like a school shooter, which I'm not. I don't even... Look, I'm not even in the debate. I'm not anti-gun. But I wouldn't care if they took your guns. Wouldn't bother me. A lot of people shouldn't have them, to be honest. By the way, Tim Osman was impersonating Ronnie Laughingberg from Awake Souls, the virtual reality earther, during the final experiments debates. And my only take on it is that there is no starting point for asserting that we are simulation dwellers. That's based on a lot of misunderstandings about dead cats, psychic monkeys, and particles and waves becoming one or the other depending on whether we're looking. Like, people use these, they appropriate the lexicon of science when it supports their stances. Skyfish says, I remember pro wrestling fans would get bent out of shape back in the 80s when I would say it was fake. Yeah, I think Trump had something to do with letting it out there that it was real. There was something about how letting it out that it was fake, that by admitting it to be fake, you're not regulated like it's a real sport. So I think there were some advantages to no longer propping up the illusion. It was a strategic decision, but until people were told it was fake, they had no clue. And that's sadly how people are processing the news today. It's blind faith. It's just the assumption that the screen is somehow a window to the real world. And that's a major vulnerability that's exploited every single day. But I'm very detached. You know, I'm seeing this wrestler getting punched, and I'm not taking sides. I'm not offended that a vet got punched or that it was a cheap shot or he went too far. Like, it doesn't faze me at all because it's just uninteresting. What is interesting to me is why the people who are responding to it like it's real are so engaged in it and how it's being politicized. Because nothing put out there that reaches critical mass is accidental in my experience. Again, just going through the comments, a lot of them do reflect a high level of butthurt. I mean, a lot of people are. So one person here is mocking me over it. Imagine having nearly 20,000 followers and only getting one like. Your family deserves better. I'll pray for them. So Gentile's going to pray for my family because I only got one like on my video suggesting it was fake. Have you seen that meme where that one person is confronting a mob of like 1,000 and he's like, you're all wrong? Like, that's kind of the position we're in a lot of the time. And the people who are in the dominant majority, the sheeple in the sheep pen, assume that because they're the consensus, they're therefore the intellectual and moral high ground occupiers, and we're down here. It's like, no. And the conspiracy theorists usually have a point. And I don't categorize myself as a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just saying the people who assume that they're right about everything because they trust the media are completely bamboozled. But we'll see. I also had some comments that surprised me on my own YouTube channel. Let me pull these up. It's people who are saying that it had to be real. I almost pulled the video. I felt kind of bad. I was like, did I jump to a conclusion here? So Flatlander 5088 says, looks real to me. And that's not an argument because Butler, Pennsylvania looks real to me. You cannot point to anything that happened on 7/13 and say, hey, this is evidence that the thing is hoaxy. You would arrive at that by doing a more expansive investigation into all the content and the relevant situation around it. For example, what we always talk about anyway, the propaganda buildup that we actually use to predict the shooting more or less. All right, so let's continue. What I'm going through right here is my minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. Okay, other comments. Forbidden Info said, it looks real. You can clearly see unconscious man's head bouncing off the ground and head turning left and right from getting hit on the jaw. Some of the punches graze his beard, but most are connecting clean. Okay, let's address that. Some of the punches graze his beard. Okay, the face is right here, His fist is right here. The person is unconscious, and it's a trained MMA fighter. Why is he going this way? You know, why wouldn't he just go straight into the thing? So you shouldn't be missing at close range unless you're intentionally missing. And add on to it, they admit it was a scripted event that went real. So no, they're blurring the lines. Flatlander says, yeah, probably fake. Yeah, on second, that's why I say suspend judgment. Or just be ready to admit you're wrong if you jump and take sides. Stuart McKenzie says there's footage of Psycho afterward with the bloody face. And I said, doesn't mean anything. Hulk Hogan's head was bleeding from Hulkamania. Trump's ear was bleeding. Tim, his head was bouncing off the canvas with every punch. Or he was faking it. I mean, that's the whole thing with wrestlers is they pantomime, they pretend. They make it look convincing. And so the idea that he's unconscious is ridiculous because he fell on a canvas. It's bouncy like a trampoline. It's not like he was slammed on the concrete. So this trained wrestler is suddenly unconscious. No, he's pretending to be unconscious so you don't think that he's the reason why his head's flopping around. He's flopping his own head around. And the other guy is flopping his hands around to make it look like he's punching the guy. It's an optical illusion. It's a trick. It's kayfabe. And a lot of people are falling for it, which doesn't bode well for the future because the majority of media auto believers really dictate what kind of psyops we get and how much power it gives the psyop entertainment complex. They're going to have total creative control over the future, thanks to people who can't see through fake wrestling. Going through your comments again. Let's Go says this stream is ripe for clipping to TikTok or Shorts. Someone do it. So that was the stream about the final debate. And my response there is, are TikTokified minds reachable? Like, really? Yeah, we could put clips up on TikTok, but the people who are being TikTokified may not be in the right state of mind to really process this. Like, I don't know, maybe. I don't have a lot of hope for the people who are consuming their information in these bites. Plain Dakota says there seems to be a psyop as well with an Indian trucker that did a U-turn, killed a family. Yeah, I mean, that's not unbelievable, but the story is he, because of DEI or something, was given precedence over an American driver, and he made a big mistake that no American driver would have done because they would have read the signs. He made a U-turn and got people killed. I've seen a lot of this stuff. I consider it anecdotal if there's not more evidence, especially now how easy it is to fake things. And the political utility of it makes me question it. Not saying it's not true, but I need more information because it sounds like agitprop, target marketed at the right wing. Nothing new. It just depends on the time of year. Like if we were near an election, they would probably make it illegal immigrants from Mexico. It just depends. All right, let's move on. Fake until proven real. And if you think that's not an appropriate way to approach things, explain why not. Like fake until proven real makes the most sense out of almost anything that we have, codified here as our approach to processing the information that we're meant to just accept. Tim Osman says, it's been over for quite a while, bro. Ronnie and Johnny have the only working projection globe dead. Oh, Ron and Jason. Yeah, I don't know their names, but one of their friends called in and he said that his evidence that we're in a simulation is that the sun is in the clouds. And the solution to that one is simply that it's an optical illusion. And the way you would debunk it is call one of your friends who's 100 miles away under different cloud cover, because the same clouds wouldn't be covering you and your friend if you're a few hundred miles apart. And you're both looking at the sun, and you each are watching the sunrise, and it looks like the sun is, quote, in the clouds. If you just take it at face value as an optical illusion. You can kind of understand it. And that's their evidence. They're saying the sun is local and it's in the clouds. Well, it can't possibly be in your clouds and your friends' clouds at the same time. So you're no longer in the simulation. And nobody ever thanks me for saving them, for rescuing them. It's like you're trapped in a simulation. You're in a Mandela affected fractured universe. You're in this nightmare scenario where the world's going to end and the red pills have made you go paranoid about 5G towers and chemtrails. And I pull people out of it. That's the whole objective here. Like taking people out of the mind war. And none of them say, thanks for the clarity. Thanks for unmandoozling me. Thanks for pulling me out of a solipsistic paradigm, likely meant to cognitively sabotage me because I might otherwise notice how fake everything is. And that's what I think a lot of these things are. We talked about the misinformation effect yesterday. And the misinformation effect is on full display with the Mandela effect. And I think it was done intentionally. But moreover, the misinformation effect is applied every single day when your psyops are concurrent with entertainment, with video games, with the movies. Because what that's doing, I think overall, we talk about predictive and concurrent programming, is it's providing psyop reinforcement content, planting suggestions, and then your recollection of the event will be fused with whatever the context in which it's recollected happens to be. There was this psychologist who was describing how she had a poster of Disneyland with Bugs Bunny in it. And when she would ask her patients to recollect going to Disneyland, they would remember Bugs Bunny. Well, he's never been there because that's Warner Brothers. He would never be in Disneyland. And yet, just having the poster in her office was enough of a suggestion to influence people's recollections. So I'm suggesting that could be another purpose to concurrent programming. Predictive doesn't explain it. These are real-time concurrent releases that reinforce the messaging of the present day psyop, whatever it happens to be. We have numerous examples of this, but what is the purpose? I think one of the purposes, again, is the misinformation effect. Copaesthetic says, reminds me of the Will Smith fake slap incident. Yeah, and shortly after the Will Smith fake slap incident, a video came out of Will Smith teaching people how to theatrically fake slap people on a stage. And that's what it looked like to me. So that looked very real. You couldn't say, oh, that looked fake. No, it looked real. The reactions were real. Nothing about it seemed fake. But then in retrospect, you're like, wait, the Nutty Professor has Jade in it. And in that, there's a Chris Rock-like comedian that she sends her boyfriend up to the stage to go confront. And after that movie, Jade Smith complained about the wig they put her in and suggested that it was some kind of imposition because it wasn't anything like her natural hair. And this was brought up in the context of the Crown Act, which has to do with natural hair in the workplace. But it was interesting because the reason that Will Smith went to go slap Chris Rock was Chris Rock made a comment about her bald head. Mazel says, I don't know what you're talking about. I guess I missed it. Well, there was a wrestler, was it Rage Jackson and his son, Raha Jackson, who was an MMA fighter, body slammed another wrestler and then supposedly beat him up for real. And everybody's arguing over, well, I'm asserting it's fake. I don't think most people are. But the people on X are saying that I'm crazy for suggesting that this wasn't a real event. Now, it was preceded by Psycho Stu hitting Jackson with a fake beer can or some kind of a prop. So it was a staged event, admittedly so, but they're claiming that the staged event became real while he was punching the guy. Well, I have a question. I want to see the script. They admit it was staged. Was it staged that Psycho Stu would be body slammed and would be unconscious? That he would fake like he was unconscious? Mom with Son says, auto-hoaxing changes everything. Well, it takes the fun out of everything for the people who are still true believers in it. It makes it fun for us, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of like a game. I mean, it is kind of funny. just how terrible it is and how vulnerable they are to criticism, how inadequate they are to handle criticism. So they invent their own engineered controlled opposition that they can just beat up this heel, like the losing opponents in wrestling. They have their manufactured opposition. The word fake, I'm surprised they haven't banned that word. That word, they've maligned it, they've twisted it. So they want you to think that the wrestling was real, but that part was, no, the wrestling's fake, but that part was real. Why are they clinging to it? Again, majorly successful PR stunt. I'm just looking at the comments. I don't think anybody here is considering it to have been a hoax. Now, I'm open to being wrong, but what would prove me wrong? Evidence. Let me see we'll see what they show us after. I'm going through the comments to see if anybody else has been suspicious. Everyone's calling for the guy to go to jail. He deserves real time. Bobak says, like, that all isn't just a show. Go to court. Yeah, a lot of people really think this was a crime, and the comments are pretty ugly. Stu is a wrestler. How did that takedown knock him unconscious? How come he didn't defend himself and fight back? Yeah, that's my question. How does a guy who's a wrestler get body slammed onto a canvas, which is like trampoline, kind of bouncy, and end up just completely unconscious? I don't buy it. It says here, it's okay to bash a beer can on the side of somebody's head without them knowing, but it's wrong when you punch them back. Make this make sense. So people are making the argument that this was a justified attack because the guy hit him with the beer can first. Well, let's say you accept that. You still have to account for the fact that this was admitted to have been scripted. Plain Decoded says, did you see the lead up before it happened? Yeah, but they admit it was scripted. So I'm questioning, did they really go off script as people are implying? And I'm suggesting no. Kevin Mooring says, is this week aliens? Actually, my thinking on the alien thing has changed. I don't think they're going to bring a bunch of crisis actors in alien costumes. They're not going to do Project Bluebeam projections in the sky. I think the alien invasion thing was to prepare us for the concept of a more intelligent species taking over. And that's going to happen. But it's not going to be aliens. It's going to be AI. And I think that's going to be the ruse here, where they're going to convince the public that this new iteration of Grok is so smart that we just need to hand over controls. And there will be no refutation to it. It'll mesmerize us. I think it's going to be miraculous, whatever it is. But it'll be completely man-made. It'll be dazzle the masses. A lot of people think ChatGPT is alive. People are going crazy. They're having psychosis over it. A lot of people think that artificial intelligence is real, just like the majority of the world's population are, part of traditional religions where they pray to statues. Like, I think this is just tapping into our natural tendency. As human beings, we've always organized around certain things, and this is just a new form of idolatry. And people need a new god. They're phasing out the old gods. Nobody believes in angels anymore. No, now people believe in aliens. And I think they're phasing in the new god. And AI is likely going to do it. But they're not going to openly call it a god. But it's going to be self-evident that it's more of a god than anything else. I mean, that's kind of what they did with COVID, where that came in, and I said, this thing is a devil that atheists will believe in. Like, it's a God construct. And you notice it shut down all the churches. It established the primacy of media as the official world state church. Like, we're in this one world religion now. So the idea that they're going to present us with a God, a personal God, because we already have Gaia, the God construct. We already have the devil with the whole COVID thing. But we needed like a personal savior type. And I think that AI is here for that. And if it's self-evidently a higher intelligence and it makes life, qualitatively better for us, I don't see why people wouldn't submit. It's not like we haven't already submitted. if you think about the psychological submission involved in entering into a permanent alternate reality game. I mean, we are in a Truman Show. The world stage is not just a metaphor. The Beheaded One says, I haven't caught up recently. Was the King Cobra JFS Death Auto host? Let me look up that one. I'm not familiar with it. I did want to bring up Chicken. So there's a rapper named is Chicken, spelled with an X. He was shot in the head at the age of 33, and I looked into the story. Rapper dies, 33, shot in the head. What does that mean? Turns out, according to the reportage, that he went and visited Nipsey Hussle in 2020, which is interesting for a couple of reasons, namely that Nipsey Hussle died in 2019. So how's that even possible? It's kind of like Kobe Bryant visiting Heath Ledger after Ledger died. But Nipsey Hussle supposedly also died at 33 of a head wound. You know, this theme here seems to have been repeated by this person who claims to have met him. And Nipsey's death is in the context of the Die Young hoax, or the Die Young curse, which is kind of a 27 Club thing that has afflicted a certain group of rappers. What's up, Josh Lebsock? Thank you for joining. So King Cobra JFS, YouTuber musician, dies at 34, likely due to organ failure. Reports still. Okay, what's the deal? So I haven't looked into it, but I will. I've noticed that there was a slew of live streamers dying during live streams, getting killed while live streaming. That's been kind of a theme lately. Then you had femicide in Mexico, where female live streamers have been killed on live streams by jilted lovers or something. Kevin Mooring says, we're going to Labor Day weekend, so look for a story to talk about. Andrea says, you're describing the plot of Severance, Apple's #1 production ever. The workers worship the AI. Okay, I need to watch that because that's where we're at. And we can't separate this notion from the bigger script because, you know, I think one of the defining moments of our analysis here is the whole thing with Space Odyssey 2001 and the monolith as a symbol being introduced, and how there's connections that we could go into regarding 2001: A Space Odyssey and 9/11. But the point I'm bringing up has to do with Hell 9000 and how you have this reoccurring theme, like of this superior intelligence, but it's arriving in the form of artificial intelligence. And this theme is pretty prevalent. I've been noting this in Netflix quite frequently. The series The 100 has an AI called Ollie who takes over the world and decides that we're going to destroy the planet. So we're just going to have to put a number of babies onto an ark and then nuke the world and then send them back down when they're 18. The Beheaded One says, that's what I was getting at, the streamer death stories. Okay. Yeah, there have been a number of these stories where live streamers are being killed during live streams. Freemason World Order says, is the Rod Todd Jackson punching incident related to the 1A scene from the new Superman movie? Okay, remind me of that. I did watch the new Superman movie. And by the way, he lost his first fight and fell to Earth, as he was describing in his opening monologue, 3 decades, 3 years, 3 months, and 3 minutes after he arrived on Earth. They have to say, oh, this is your 33-year-old sun god savior sent from the heavens to save the world. Okay, here I'm looking at this part you referenced. The scene occurs at the climax of the movie and has sparked strong reactions and debate for the way it addresses his dual identity. Yeah, please elucidate for us. Yes, watch it. I'd love to hear your breakdown. I'm watching it now. Yeah, I'll check out Severance. I started to watch it. I saw the first episode, so I think I'll check it out. And the fact that it's #1 means I should watch it. Like, if you're going to do what we term here Metascript breakdown, it's a good idea to watch whatever's #1. And this is predictable. If it's #1, if it's being projected to the masses, in all likelihood, It's a reflection of something that's about to be staged and faked and presented to you on the news. This is a reoccurring theme. This is all empirical research. We're not cherry picking. Predictive programming is not a conspiracy theory. In fact, to call it that is a straw man, a misnomer. It doesn't quite explain what we're looking at here. We have a more comprehensive explanation. Okay, so the 1A meme. A memorable confrontation where Lex Luthor shouts 1A, 1A, issuing attack commands. Became an instant meme online. Oh, I see. Button mashing. I want to see the actual meme. And I brought this up before. There's some elements of Elon Musk in Lex Luthor. And he has this parallel universe where he has these bot farms populated by mad monkeys, raging monkeys, hate tweeting 24/7, which is another example of this correlation between the rage virus and the apes that we referred to back with 28 Days Later, and it's been a reoccurring theme, connecting the mind virus to rage and violence in the real world, specifically right-wing violence. So Andrea says that Severance is in the mystery box genre. Yeah, I like movies like that. I've been checking out a few of those. Like, if you've seen Cube, it's pretty grotesque. That's one that kind of fits that. But I'll probably check it out for a few reasons. Because I do think that they are conditioning the public to accept the premise of a higher intelligence taking over. So it's not going to be physical aliens, although, and I've said this before, if aliens invade, the right wing is going to claim it's demons. I said this long before Tucker Carlson said, his Pentagon buddies said, aliens were demons. Long before a demon alien attacked him in his bed and left scars and claw marks. But I said that the right, who have traditional worldviews, are going to consider aliens to be a deception from the government, if not demons, or both. And that is the dividing line here. And I noticed a similar pattern with AI, that they view AI as demonic, as evil, as somehow some kind of future enslaver. And you'll see now that same attitude will come about. The left will embrace the AI god like they will embrace aliens. And the right will say it's a demon. The right will, be very much afraid of it. And it's all by design. It's a perfect bifurcation, and it's not a coincidence. I was watching Tucker once, and in the same breath he said, my Pentagon buddies say that the aliens are actually something very dark and evil and demonic. And in his next breath he says, illegal aliens from South Africa are coming from some very bad places, and they're going to come and kill us. So he's promoting xenophobia for extraterrestrials and illegal aliens, like in the same breath. And so you can kind of see that part of the structure of this political horseshoe has it where the right is all about insulating behind borders, having fear of the other, and stopping incursion. So you have the build the wall, pandered to the national security. Anti-vax is really about integrity of the skin border. And you see these attitudes reflected with regard to aliens, even Trump's Space Force to protect them from the invaders. But it all comes down to, I think, the Metascript, the PSYOP entertainment complex employs stories that they know in all likelihood will work on us based on our built-in psychological structure. So there's some very basic primal fears. And I think the fundamental divide between left and right is really relationship to power. And the left is all about submission. Open borders, let the aliens in. Open skin, let the injection in. And embrace the aliens. Don't fear them as demons. Freemason World Order says Ultraman is punching Superman in the head and Raha Jackson is punching the rest of in the head, and both use the same arm. Okay, I think you're onto something here. By the way, in Superman, they definitely had a scene where Hawk Girl kills Benjamin Netanyahu, just drops him out of the sky. They barely even disguise it. So I'm 100% you're right here. So what he's referring to is Lex Luthor is remote controlling this thing and it's punching Superman in the head or something, but it's gratuitous head punching. So Ultraman punching Superman in the head. This happened in the lead up to the movie where Lex Luthor controls Ultraman to injure and wear down Superman. Okay, I recall the scene now, but I'm with you on it. You're probably right about this. This gratuitous punching of the guy on the ground. And again, the way he's been characterized, I didn't know who Psycho Stu was, but I look at pictures of him and he's got the American flags. He's the veteran. And so that's meant to, I think this is definitely polarizing, just like every other one of these psyops lately. All right, let me go through the server here. And also, if you want to follow my tweets, it's IPS Think Tank. A number of people are actually starting to agree with me that this thing is fake. And so, again, you may not have enough information to know why it's fake. Doesn't mean you have to assume it's real until proven fake. It's like a magic show. Just because you haven't figured it out doesn't mean you have to say it's magic. It's like, I got to figure out how they did this. I'm open to the possibility I'm wrong, though. So that's where I differ from conspiracy theorists who are never wrong. I don't think a conspiracy theorist has ever been wrong. Thursazar says, did you not watch the video? You could say that about every single psyop that we've ever been with, ever examined. Stuart McKenzie says, I've been with you 99% of these hoaxes, Tim, but leaning towards real with this one. I could be wrong, but those punches connected in my opinion. Okay, if he was unconscious, they connected. I would give you that. My question is, was he unconscious or was that part of the script? Because they said it was scripted. They admit it was scripted. So at what point do you think it became real? Do you think the body slam really knocked him out? And then I looked at the punches in slow motion. It wasn't 20 like they said. So anybody saying 20 is exaggerating. So if it wasn't 20 punches, how many was it? So let's cut that down. Daniel Moore said it felt kind of real. Did it? I mean, I looked at it. At first, I thought, okay, it's got to be real. Everybody's saying it's real. But when I slowed it down, I started counting the punches. And then I noticed, wait a minute, why is this professional face puncher missing? And why is he doing these wide arc hooks? And then why is he punching the guy's beard? Like you can see the fist is actually hitting below the chin, hitting the beard. So my contention here is that Stu, Psycho Stu, faked like he was unconscious, and whenever the fist contacted his skin, he flung his head around. I think he kayfabed it. I think he's faking it. And I think there's reason to support this. And there weren't 20 punches to the face. Count them yourself. There weren't 20. And if you look at my clip, you'll see that at least 7 out of 10 of them, if there were 10, missed. Again, how does a professional face puncher who's got an unconscious victim pinned down miss even one time? Every single fist should have contacted, but he was missing. And this was a trained fighter. So again, I'm not buying it. And given the drama around it, I'm thinking hoax. But if I see something convincing or compelling later, maybe I'll change my mind. But the other point of it too is they admit the event was scripted. So again, this wasn't spontaneous. The guy wasn't responding to an affront to his dignity when he was hit with the beer can, because that was part of the story, and it wasn't a real beer can. It was some kind of wrestling prop. So yes, he's likely an amazing actor. But I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see and get a few other opinions on the matter. Grok admitted that it was fake to a point. And if part of it's fake, I think it's safe to say it's all fake. I think it's a safe assumption. Which is why when there's a big body count with some event and we see evidence of fakery, you know, laughing, smiling actors with water bottles, I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and assume 0. Yeah, the beard, though, was being tossed around pretty roughly and dramatically. And I think that was part of the illusion. a convincing illusion. It created a blur, chaos. Linda Curtis says, I'm not into WWE, but is Psycho Stu supposed to represent Stu Peters? Stu Pitters. Stu Pitters, I see. Yeah, Stu Peters has not been on my mind lately. I'm not sure if I blocked him. You only need to follow one of these right-wing propaganda agitators, and you get the same content. They all spew the same stuff. So Laura Witzke, Stu Peters, and about half a dozen others I could name are all propagandists from the same entity. But no, I haven't really thought about the underlying meaning of it. Psycho Stu is spelled with SS, you know, kind of a Nazi inference there. But the American flags and the vet thing is hard to ignore. All right, so let's move on. Ghislaine Maxwell testified that Trump never acted inappropriately, nor received any massages. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how many years, think about this, how many years did a lot of these diehard MAGA people walk around thinking that there was going to be some big revelation coming from Epstein Island? How many hours, how many conversations, how many ruined Thanksgivings were the result of this notion that there was going to be a big awakening and the world leaders were going to be exposed as compromised and the deep state was going to be defeated? That was just a waste of time. I mean, I'm just saying, that's all we really have is time and our focused attention. And in this attention economy, it seems like they have every interest in making the screen your sole focal point. And people get involved in these rabbit trails and they're misled. It was a false awakening. They all got duped. They chased carrots, chasing rotten carrots still. Some of them are still clinging to that hope, but look, now it's nothing. Tomino says now it's flipped to a left conspiracy. Kevin Morgan says Mr. Jackson apologized on behalf of his son who said suffered a concussion days earlier, and he hoped Mr. Smith recovered quickly. Yeah, I read his statement, but again, they let it slip that it was a scripted event. And so I need to see the script before I can go any further. I mean, if you can make a leap and say, I believe this to be the case with this sparse evidence, then you're what I would consider to be a low info believer. At this point, I need more information. And I think the script would be revealing because I need to know, was Psycho Stu scripted to feign unconsciousness? Because you don't just get body slammed and get knocked out. Again, if you haven't been on one of these mats, it's basically a trampoline. Joined by Thomas Hughes. Thanks for joining. We are talking about kayfabe. So here's another, I knew this was going to, there's another headline. It's all over, TMZ, etc. Rampage Jackson's son. LAPD launches an investigation into the brutal investigation. So TMZ's on it. This is being looked at by the LAPD. So it says here, listen how this is framed. The attempted murder of a professional wrestler after being disrespected. Did the redneck drunk deserve it? Listen to that framing. So they're framing it in a certain way. Did he deserve it? And it was a disrespectful move with this can thing. But again, if that was in the script, then we can't claim that that's even a viable explanation for this thing. But people aren't aware that it was faked. So Proms Levy says, I saw a video where the other guy bullied him first by bursting open a full can of drink on his head before the fight. Was that fair? Let's see what else we have here. I don't know much of the backstory, but again, I'm still looking at the fact that TMZ is covering it. I don't know. Again, TMZ is, isn't that a reference to a strip of land? What is it? How many miles is it? I'm going to have to look this up. I'm addicted to perplexity. It's a 30-mile zone. But TMZ is a major PSYOP reinforcement organization. You can imagine it to be news if you want. TMZ is the 30-mile zone, a term from the Hollywood entertainment industry referring to the 30-mile radius centered at Beverly Boulevard and La Cienega Boulevard. This zone determines union rules for work done by TV crews inside and outside the boundaries. Okay, so there's some little backstory. Copaesthetic says fake AF, another day, another PSYOP. Yeah. Too hyped up for me to think it's real, but we'll see. I'd be happy to be proven wrong. But what is the burden of proof here? Thomas says PSYOP echo chamber. Well, yeah, the thing too is if you're going to assert that it's real, I would simply ask, what is your evidence? Does it look real? Is that enough? Because as I said before, the Trump ear piercing by the AR-15 looked real. Thrustazar says, I hope you're right. Well, okay, if this was real, it would be a major exception to the rule. You know, they're on a stage with professional actors who professionally fake injuries. That's all they do. They pretend like they're hurt. They fake take punches all day, and you find it questionable that this person could possibly have faked this too? Again, is it real because they designated it real? And let's compare those punches to regular punches in wrestling and tell me they don't look the same. Because in wrestling, when they punch each other, the person getting punched really does throw their face around in an exaggerated way. Thrustazar said Trump was fake AF, didn't look real. I would ask you, how do you know? Like, what is your basis for saying it didn't look real? I don't think we had enough information to say it looked fake. You hear the shots, he ducks down. There wasn't enough there to say, oh, that looks obviously fake. But after the fact, there were indicators that it was a PR stunt. Plenty. But it wasn't in the thing itself. And you don't need to be able to see through special effects to deconstruct a hoax. In fact, you don't need it. You can assume that their visual effects departments are only going to get better. So we need to get better at deconstructing fake news without relying on visually debunking it. Because it's not always going to be possible. At least not at first glance. So again, I would argue that the Trump thing didn't look fake. And if you think it looked fake, what is your special insight? Now, some people, like this security guard was describing, this was some professional bodyguard, he said he thought it was fake because that if someone were actually under protection and they were being shot at, they wouldn't be propped up to raise their fist and make themselves into a target again. Like, that's just entirely implausible. But many people who've recognized the implausibility of it don't go further. Like, if fake, then what? What would logically follow from the Trump head thing being fake? Well, it would mean, one, the Secret Service were a part of it. So there's something to consider. It would imply that the media there was entirely controlled left and right. So it's not Trump and the Republican media fooling the world or fooling the left. They're complicit in it. The people backstage are then very questionable. And have you seen the guy who's always wearing brick costumes? Like, he's dressed up like bricks on his suit. They call him Brick Man. He's been at all the different Trump rallies. Well, he uploaded his own video, and I tried to upload it, but he was going to send a DMCA takedown notice, his backstage footage of the Trump shooting. And what you see is when Trump is being propped up, the flag gets right into view, and all the photographers are walked up into position by the Secret Service. Like, the photographers are posed, they're put in a position so they can perfectly capture Trump getting his PR shots in. And I'm like, wait a minute here. How do they know for sure that there was only one shooter? Thrustazar says, contrast that with the ear footage with the time Trump reacted to a loud noise. Yeah, I don't think his acting was that great. I think it was a magic trick, and I think the hand sign was pointing at the illegal immigrant sign. That was the signal. Beheaded One says the white lady knocked out in Cincinnati looked real, but the wounds and PR looked fake. Freemason World Order says you can fake anything using Google VO3. Right, you can, but if you're going to assert something's fake, you can't just say it looks like CGI. You have to check and see if there's other footage. You have to take care of the due diligence here. But the kayfabe that I'm seeing in this wrestling match, this kayfabe thing, to me, is a clear example of where people will agree something's real or fake depending on whether it's designated as such. It's not about special effects or believability. What's up, Ted Stryker? Thank you for joining. We have 120 people watching right now. I think there's a shooting in South Carolina. I haven't talked about it much. I'm waiting for more information to come out. Sinker Morpheus mentioning something about this Psycho Stu beating. I'm having a lot of fight videos come up in my feed a lot, and the comments are often racially charged, with people continuing to punch and kick people in the head after they lose consciousness, described as a black thing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that the comments are fitting a familiar pattern. Just like they lined up with Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony, or Shiloh Hendricks and that 5-year-old autistic kid. So we're talking about this simply because it's being mainstreamed, and as we're talking about it, it gets put onto TMZ. Again, LAPD is launching an investigation into this beatdown. To me, that suggests fake. All right, let me go through the rest of my comments. I haven't had this much pushback for calling something fake in a long time. It reminds me of the Vegas shooting and some of the truck attacks before that. Okay, if you want to follow me at Twitter, it's IPS Think Tank. So we're talking about Kayfabe World. Leo Biddle says the purpose of propaganda is not to persuade or convince, not to inform, but to humiliate. And the less it corresponds to reality, the better. Was it Casey? His name is William Casey, who said that we will know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Yes. But anyway. Okay, I have another thing I was looking at today. We're talking about the JFK assassination. And let's say it was faked. As I think most of us here are aware that the JFK assassination was a movie directed by Stanley Kubrick in all likelihood. And you know, in the movie Dr. Strangelove, which was screened on 11/22/63, JFK's death day, there was a line that had to do with a pie thrown in the face of the president in Dallas. There was actually a reference. But I was thinking about how, as we started to note how fake things are, and we were looking at the JFK assassination through this new lens, the Mandela effect people would just take over the conversation. And they would say, I remember from the Zapruder film that there were only 4 seats in the car, and now there were 6. So now they're debating on how many seats there were in the Ford Lincoln. And I remember thinking what a pointless kind of conversation this is. And it took away the conversation from, did it even happen? Who directed it? How extensive is this operation of faking world events? Because that's kind of where we were going with this. And I think it's by design. So now I'm looking more critically at Tartaria and mud flood and these various genres of conspiracy theorizing where they assert that our history has been completely rewritten and that there was 1,000 years eliminated from our calendar, that we don't know when we are, that there's been some major reset. And I'm not necessarily against that notion. However, I think focusing on speculation regarding history 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, is misdirection. I think the focus should be the real-time manipulation and manufacturing of history, because that's what's happening. And the more we look at the faking of events that drive our historic narrative, which creates our consensus backdrop, the more it's clear to me that history manipulation is actually standard operating procedure. It's systemic fakery. But the people who are speculating about 1,000 years ago aren't looking at the significance of recent history manipulation. And the reason why I think this should be the focus is it highlights the real significance of fake news. Fake news isn't about getting votes or small localized influence operations, but it's far more extensive than that. And a lot of people are missing the point. All right, I'm going through my comments. So again, Trump's completely innocent, Ghislaine Maxwell. Breaking Hulk Hogan's daughter claims that 9/11 tapes will change the narrative about his death. Someone pointed out the death was on the 10th anniversary of his racial scandal. But Hulk Hogan has been kind of a topic here because of his significance post Butler, when he showed up at the RNC and talked about the Trump getting shot. And then we were noting the interesting correlation between the Hulk character and Trump in this context. Hulk Hogan describing the shooting, and then you had the Harrison Ford counterpart to Trump getting shot at the podium, and he's the Red Hulk, and then Mark Ruffalo getting shot at and then posing for the cameras with a bloody cheek like Trump in Mickey 17. And Ruffalo is also a actor who portrayed the Hulk. So there was some kind of recurring theme here that we were picking up on. So Hulk Hogan's passing, I don't know, real or fake, don't know. People die, yes. Don't dispute that. But all of these actors have some kind of utility, I think, even at the end. Man arrested for threatening to assassinate the president. I think there's been a few of those. Armed neo-Nazis chanting white power marching through Indianapolis. They're all wearing masks. They look just like Antifa. I think it's the same people and they just swap out the costumes. Now, I've often talked about another #1 show, The Madness, which was on Netflix, and how this is another example of life imitating Netflix. The main character is obviously based on Don Lemon. The leader of the white nationalists is based on Nick Fuentes. The conspiracy theorist Patriot Girl is based on Laura Loomer. And in The Madness, it's Lauren Jennings. And the billionaire who is financing the Nazis online, who helped steal the election, that's based on Musk. It's pretty obvious. And I called this out before Vanity Fair did a review and made these same connections. Well, anyway, Laura Loomer's character dies. Nick Fuentes' character dies. The Musk character also dies. Well, after the movie came out, there were many assassination threats directed at Musk. The Tesla factories were getting bombed. People were keying the cars. Nobody's doing that now. But this was in the wake of the anti-CEO sentiment triggered by the class warrior Luigi Mangione shooting the United Healthcare CEO, which again is part of the theme in The Madness, class warfare, justified killings when the lower class are taking out one of the villains at the top. But anyway, I've been bringing this movie up, this series up, because it's an example of life following Netflix. And here's Laura Loomer a few days ago she has an email she received after she blew the whistle on certain Gazans being allowed to immigrate here. And anyway, she says here, the Palestinian movement is violent. They're threatening to murder me. Quote, we are tracking you. We will be putting a bullet in your head. You will not live until Monday. Now, this is on the 16th. So, but anyway, we know where you are at all times. So she has reported death threats from the NSA and now from some terrorist groups. And she has called out Jack Dorsey as potentially complicit in election fraud in 2020. And what's interesting there is in her corresponding character's capacity, this Lauren Jennings in The Madness, she's exposing election fraud, and that's when she gets taken out. So I'm just noting here that there are multiple guns pointed at Laura Loomer. A number of different entities would find it convenient if she were to be shuffled off the world stage. And I made this as a loose prediction based on the pattern of Netflix predicting reality. And I also said the same about Nick Fuentes. And an assassin did show up at his house, as we've discussed. With Musk, he did get the threats. So it hasn't 100% manifested, but the sentiment has been certainly reflected on the world stage. The beheaded one says, I just watched a movie with Harrison Ford where he's being set up for murdering his coworker he had an affair with. In the end, his wife did it out of envy, and she was the one who set it up. Yeah, I haven't kept up with him, but I noticed that he crashes planes a lot. Like he's got his little jets, his little airplanes, and he's always crashing them. And I'm wondering if that's not staged in order to bolster his image. This is Han Solo. And it's very on brand, I would think, for Han Solo, Indiana Jones to be crashing a plane and surviving and stuff. So I kind of think that those are fake. Like these psyops are propaganda stunts. They're PR stunts. They're influence operations. You know, people conflate psyops with terror attacks and mass shootings. It's like, no, there's a variety of psyops. They exist in all spheres of life. Okay, I'm just going through my tweets to make sure I haven't missed anything. So on the 16th, I tweeted this, haha, in response to Elon Musk tweeting his dragon orbiting across Europe into Asia. Now, he said, this is a real video. Now, if it was a real video, why would you have to say this is a real video? Why is he even acknowledging that there's even a potential for doubt? There's no reason. It just seems insecure. Dragon orbiting across Europe. And I think it's because he's gaslighting you. The definition of gaslighting is when your perceptions are being screwed with, and when you call it out or you notice the discrepancy, you're told, no, this isn't fake. This is real. And what that does is it tells you that your perceptions are unreliable, and you're better off outsourcing to the person who can tell you what's real, because you're inadequate to differentiate real from fake. So when Elon Musk says this is real and it's obviously fake, he's gaslighting you. He's dominating your perceptions. He's overriding your perceptions. And now you're outsourcing that. And this is done in every single area of life. I mean, gaslighting and the misinformation effect are really built into the mainstream mediation process. A lot of people are saying this is absolutely a fake video. He almost seems despondent. Like maybe he's reading the comments and he's really sweating it. And I question, is it possible that Musk doesn't know how fake this stuff is? Like maybe because of his drugs or something, he's not able to have a security clearance where he can be trusted with this type of information. Because I've heard they don't let him backstage at SpaceX. Like, what? They don't let him backstage? Like, maybe he doesn't know. What an awkward position. Kevin Mooring says, thoughts on troops going to Chicago? Yeah, what is that? Troops going to 19 states. It seems like some kind of psyop prep. Drills tend to precede something. It means, like, when they do drills, at a minimum, they're getting stuff into place. They're setting up with all the necessary agencies, getting all the sellouts into the closed door meetings. Hey, we're going to run a psyop based on this drill. All of you sign your name in blood. So they get everybody together before they do the events. These drills serve a purpose. These are dry rehearsals for psyops. So in all likelihood, this type of deployment is going to precede something. But what? I'll have to watch Netflix to know. The Army Psychological Operation Manual from 1987 is called the FM33-1. Reminds me of Wag the Dog. The movie Wag the Dog, about how they fake the news with actors and green screens and the public has no idea, from 1997. But in Wag the Dog, there was this reference to the Min of 303. And I always thought that was kind of possibly a reference to the PSYOP entertainment department, the ones who are tasked with, faking everything. But if you haven't seen it, here's a brief synopsis. The president has a scandal. Oh, this is another thing too. The president of the United States is caught making advances on an underage girl in the Oval Office 2 weeks before the election. So they bring in a spin doctor. He constructs a fictional war in Albania to distract the media. So that's the main part of it. But there's another aspect to this. I'm pretty sure that Wag the Dog came out right before the Monica Lewinsky thing. Yeah, look at this. Hollywood Reporter. Wag the Dog foretold Bill Clinton's White House scandal in 1997. So what is this? Again, is this life imitating art? No. Kevin Morning says, I see a church window painting behind you. Yeah, I'm doing some watercolor. That one's just kind of abstract. Kind of looks like stained glass. All right, well, we have quite a lot to continue to go through here as far as notes. If anybody wants to try calling in, I'm open to it. Last week was the anniversary of Elvis's death. Elvis died at 42, August 16th, 1977. August 16th is Madonna's birthday. And the reason why this is relevant is all these various idols tend to have very relevant birth dates, and they're interrelated. Like David Bowie's birthday is Elvis's birthday. Not insignificant. And there's some overlap here with the themes, the archetypes that they bring. And I think what these pop stars and these rock stars ultimately represent, as far as idol worship goes, are, I think it's pretty much a form of worship in a way, but it's the idea of the incarnated gods, the descended beings from the moon goddess incarnate, the sun god. And I was talking about this stuff last week because I was re-examining Neo in the Matrix, how we talk about his birthday and his expiration date on his passport. So it's like, okay, if Neo is born 9/11, that's already interesting because his passport connects to 9/11, where we learned about the attackers through the passports. So there's this recurring theme. He dies for 72 hours, Neo being the one, the savior of the Matrix, or 72 seconds, which corresponds to the 72 hours that Jesus dies before he's resurrected. Neo is resurrected by Trinity, another Christian reference. She kisses him and resurrects him. And I noted that this is very similar to how in Egyptian myth, Isis resurrects her husband Osiris with more than a kiss, but it's the same concept, the resurrection of the dead god. And then I came across this theory that Jesus was born on 9/11. Proponents cite astronomical calculations and events described in Revelation 12:1 that match the celestial configuration visible on 9/11 3 BC, involving the constellation Virgo and the moon under her feet. So they suggested, based on these astronomical alignments, that Jesus was born on 9/11, which is a New Year's Day in the Coptic calendar, I believe. But my point here is you've got connections with Neo, Christ, and being the one, the Savior, all connected to 9/11. And the significance here with 9/11, I think, is that it represents in many ways a crucifixion, in the sense that it's a big sacrifice. It's a transformative psyop that redefines the world stage. So it's a contemporary myth, in other words. But then, in context, and I put a blog up about this, I'm like, wait, I just watched Superman, where you have a savior from outer space, 33 years old. And then I watched Fantastic Four, where you have these four characters who go to space in an obelisk, a symbol of sun worship, and the rays of the sun give them superpowers. So they come back down as world saviors. And they save the world against Galactus, a very Saturnian, Saturn-like character. In Rise of the Silver Surfer, they even superimpose his head over the planet Saturn. But I'm pointing out here that we're often given these, and I came up with this term, well, it actually pre-existed, but I thought I coined it, cinematic syncretism. So here's where I'm going with this. What's the point of it? Superman, why do we have a 33-year-old heaven-sent savior who gets his powers from the sun? Why is Neo's character borrowing from Jesus? I'm saying it's for the same reason that Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader is reminiscent of the death of Osiris, the severed lightsaber, the severed hand hanging on the cross. And then we have all these movies, these heroes like Tom Cruise, recently Maverick, Top Gun 2, replete with references to the sun god, sun worship, obelisks, the number 33, death and resurrection, characters named like Rooster, Phoenix, both Christ symbols. And you can find many examples. If you just look up Tom Cruise, he's always hanging off of cliffs. He's always hanging or falling. So I'm suggesting here that they're not plagiarizing, they're not out of ideas, but this is syncretism. They're updating the paradigm, and these myths are being updated to reflect the changes, just like the angels have been replaced by aliens. I think we're being presented with the same exact stories, Old Testament and New Testament, within a new framework. And Wall-E is a good example of the Old Testament story of Noah's flood being reintroduced. But I think it's a replacement through syncretism, mixing it with science fiction. So the metascriptors, like the strangers in Dark City, like Matrix agents in The Architect, or the design authority from Megalopolis, are the architects of our worldview. So it's not about an homage, it's not a tribute to Christ. They're not borrowing it for any other reason than they are manufacturing replacement. Thrustazar said one of the towers had a spear wound. Good observation. So the towers, how old were the towers when the towers fell? Oh, that's right, 33. And 13 years later, which is a resurrection number, they were replaced with the One World Trade Tower, 1776 feet high, which has a great deal of significance. It's the year of America's birth, but 1776 also has a more occultic reference. If you go into the biblical lore, that would say that the Tower of Babel's construction began in 1776 AL, this year of light, which adds 4,000 to our calendar. It's the Masonic calendar. So if you go by that, then 1776 AD would be 5776 AL. And that's the height in inches of the Great Pyramid in Giza, which you see represented on the dollar bill as a pyramid with the capstone, the eye, and at the bottom in Roman numerals 1776. So this connects the Tower of Babel's construction to the birth of America and its construction to the Great Pyramid, and all of it's connected now to the One World Trade Tower, which is 1776 feet high. So this One World Tower of Babel. And if you look at the One World Trade Towers architecture, yeah, from afar it looks like a syringe. But if you get closer, it actually looks like a pyramid with a capstone. You can just look it up yourself. It's easy to find that particular image. So this idea here of America as Babylon is kind of reinforced. Not a new idea, but for the purposes of the Metascript, it's been described this way. It's been positioned as such. And this is why we've placed so much emphasis on the symbolism of like the Space Needle, which is an analogous symbol to this Tower of Babel construct. Freemason World Order says, have you watched the miniseries Marvel and the DC connections to the occult? It says the same things you do. No, I'll have to look into it though. I have read a number of books on the subject, especially on the mythology that they represent. And it's also useful to look at Marvel and DC as fictional universes that are used as propaganda conduits to target the masses with the specific messaging and imagery that are going to relate to whatever psyop they're being hit with at the time. It's pretty obvious when you look at the Batman and Joker movies, the Dark Knight Rises. Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan are very well represented among the various metascriptors that we point at. But the occult undertones are definitely there. I noticed this. In fact, I could probably pull this up on my blog. If you go to timosman.substack, I have a blog about the Scarlet Woman, the Red Witch, the Scarlet Witch. It's a recurring theme that we see in a lot of these movies, and it all does pertain specifically. Here it is. So I have an article here. I'll post a link in the chat if you want to look at it. The article, actually, this all ties in. I may have to update it to Barbie and the Barbie-lon thing we were talking about. Barbieheimer. When Barbie came out with Oppenheimer, there's a subtext there worth exploring. But what's with the witches in red? So I was just doing this study of how you have this new goddess archetype